Hi guys, my name's Natalia and welcome back to my channel where I talk about books. Today I want to share with you my March and April wrap up. So I didn't read that many books in March, so I didn't do a wrap up for that month. So I just decided to combine March and April and do like a joint video. So I think let's get straight into it. The first book that I read was a thriller called Local Woman Missing. I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. So the plot of this book is that there's this woman, Shelby, that goes missing, and not long after, another woman in the same neighborhood also goes missing, but she goes missing together with her daughter, and like nobody is sure if these disappearances are somehow connected or not. And then fast forward 11 years later, the woman's daughter, whose name is Delilah, she actually is found and she comes back, and the story is told from a few different perspectives of a few different characters, and also all of these points of view are in a different time frame. I actually think that it was good that the story was written from the perspective of different characters, because it felt like they all brought something unique to the story, so I did like that aspect. Now, the writing style was pretty simple. Like, the sentences were like really simple and short, and I feel like it began to bother me the longer I was reading it. Also, the pacing of the book seemed a bit slow, like for the first maybe 80% of the book, and it felt like there was like a lot of drama woven into the story, but you had to go through a lot of boring scenes that didn't add much in order to get to the juicy part. Okay, and then we get to the end when all the plot twists are revealed, and I'm going to tell you they felt a bit far-fetched. I don't know, I was just like, what? It was shocking, I'm not going to lie, but I was like, how plausible is that? I was like really thinking. Of course, every like thriller mystery author wants to shock the readers, but I think it still should be plausible. You know, if you like really start thinking up some crazy scenarios, it's not going to be such a good story or such a good ending. So that's how I felt about the ending. I was a bit disappointed that the story didn't go in a different direction, but oh well. So, you know, I wouldn't say it was a bad thriller or it was the worst thriller I've ever read, but it was pretty average, and there are a lot more thrillers that I would recommend instead of this one. So yeah, I gave it 3.5 stars. It was just so. Okay, so the next book I read was actually an essay called We Should All Be Feminists. I thought it was very well written, concise, and thought-provoking essay. I think the author put a lot of my own thoughts and opinions into words, so that was really satisfying. It's a very short read, so I definitely think everyone should read it and give it a chance, especially those who view feminism as something negative or maybe threatening to men, or maybe they think that women are not discriminated against anymore, because they are, maybe not to the extent that they used to, but we still are discriminated. And the book contained a lot of real life examples. It was a very quick read, and what can I say? I gave it 4 stars. I enjoyed it. Like I said, I think everyone should read it, especially since it's so short. It's not going to take a lot of your time. So I would just say, yeah, I enjoyed it. It was very well written. Okay, the next book that I read, I have it with me. It's called A Study in Drowning. I ended up giving it 5 stars. So I enjoyed it a lot. First of all, let's take a moment to admire this beautiful cover. I think it's literally the most beautiful cover I own. It's just so beautiful. So what is this book about? We follow our protagonist Effie, who is an architecture student, but she really loves literature, and especially she has this favorite author that wrote her favorite book. And this author recently passed away, and there is this competition to design this late author's manor. And this competition is directed at architecture students. So Effie, despite being just a first-year student who isn't even that keen on architecture, she wanted to be a literature student, but she was not admitted. So anyway, she sends in her application, and miraculously she is chosen. She wins the competition, and she is invited to the late author's house to design it and all of that. So she goes there, but it ends up being like a huge mystery that she has to solve along with another student who is also staying at the manor. So I feel like this book is like a perfect blend between fantasy and dark academia and mystery. So if you like I personally love all of these things, so if you also love all of these things, I would highly recommend this book. I feel like the pacing was a bit slow, but I personally didn't feel bored at all. I was just mesmerized by the beautiful and careful descriptions of everything. The overall atmosphere of this book was really eerie and unsettling. And this book also talked about some like important topics like dealing with trauma and anxiety and misogyny. And I really liked the main character and the main male character. So they started off kind of as rivals, so you could say this is the rivals to lovers trope. It is just a standalone book, it's not a series, so obviously you don't have like the next book where you could continue the romance, so it had to be like wrapped up in this one book. So I don't think the pacing of the romance was rushed, but I guess some people might think so just because it had to be like wrapped up in this one book. But I just thought like the relationship between Effie and Preston, who is the other student staying at the manor, I think their relationship was really precious, and it was just really lovely to see them go from disliking each other to slowly caring for each other and admiring each other, and it was just so precious and heartwarming. So overall I love this book, and I decided to give it 5 stars because the like entire writing, atmosphere, the mystery, all of it was so interesting. It's just so fun to read. So if you want a good standalone fantasy novel, I can highly recommend this one. The next book I read was also a fantasy novel called Belladonna. This one I ended up giving it 4 stars. So there were some things that I really liked and some things that were like meh, but yeah, let's talk about it. This book is like a well-crafted combination between fantasy, murder mystery, and gothic elements. And the theme of death is very prevalent in this book. So our protagonist Signa, she basically can see ghosts, she can see death himself, and she cannot really die. There were some instances when she suffered fatal injuries, but she didn't die. And each time she like died, I mean she was supposed to die, she would end up seeing death. So it was like she was in this place between the living and the dead, and she could see death, who is like, he has the shape of a person I guess, but he's just like a heap of shadows, I could say. And she really hates death because so many people in her life died, and she just ended up feeling like it's her fault, and she didn't understand why she cannot die, but so many people around her died. She was orphaned as a child. She's also about to inherit a huge fortune once she turns like 20 years old. So a lot of people that would take care of her they would do so only for the money, not really because they wanted to take care of her or because they really cared about her. So just a lot of people that ended up being her guardians were just terrible to her, and all of them would just end up dying. So just, she kept like getting new guardians each time the previous one would die. And now she was invited to the house of her last living relatives. But the family living in this house is kind of distraught by the recent events because the mother of 2 children, she recently passed away, and now her daughter is also sick. Then the ghost of the mother actually visits Signa, and she tells her that she'd been poisoned. It was not an illness, not an accident. Someone planned her death. The same thing is happening to her daughter, so she asks Signa to solve this mystery and protect and save her daughter. And in order to do this, Signa had to make an alliance with death. Okay, I have to say I do like the mystery itself. There were many twists, and I honestly couldn't predict who was the culprit, so I really enjoyed that part of the book. I also grew fond of and was rooting for many of the characters, especially Blythe. She was like my favorite character. I love her so much. However, the reason why I couldn't give it 5 stars was because I was not a huge fan of the romance. I don't know, it felt like they just went from hating each other to being just so in love and obsessed with each other in like an instant. I was just like, I couldn't understand it. And just the relationship between them and some of the things that he kept saying her, I found it to be a little bit cringy. Especially like this scene when they were pretty intimate with each other, but he was in his shadow form. I was like, how does that even work? I don't know. Just thinking about it made me feel pretty uncomfortable. I was like, no, I'm not a huge fan of this romance. So will I read the next books in this series? Definitely. I still really enjoyed this book and I want to see what happens next, but definitely the romance was not for me. But that's just my personal opinion. That's why I took away 1 star. Yeah. Okay, and the last book I read was a nonfiction self-help kind of book called Why Has Nobody Told Me This Before by Dr. Julie Smith. So I ended up giving this one 4 stars. This is a book that's meant to help you navigate through some difficult things in your life and deal with your depression or anxiety, and it just talks about many different aspects of life. Some of the advice felt like stuff that pretty much everyone is aware of, something like you need to sleep a lot and exercise and eat healthy. I feel like everyone knows that, although some people do need to be reminded of that, and I think I am one of those people that need to be reminded of that, but still. However, there were still some new things that I learned, and it definitely made me really contemplate some parts of my life and some of my ways of thinking. I also really like the exercises that were provided in the book. I think they might be especially helpful to those who don't have access to therapy, or maybe who just want to work on themselves in their free time but they don't know where to start. So the author provides different exercises like this and a lot of prompts and a lot of questions that you can ask yourself. So I think that is very useful, and I will definitely keep coming back to this book. I just don't think it's the type of book that, you just read from the beginning to the end. I think it's the type of book that you just come back to, especially when you need it. It was generally written in a very easy to understand way. I wish some of the topics were covered a bit more thoroughly, because it just felt as if the author only scratched the surface. But then again, come to think of it, if she were to write thoroughly about each aspect of life, she would have to probably write a few different books on all of these topics. I feel like it's just a good overall book to anyone who's new to learning about mental health. If you've already read many books like that or watched many videos like that, or maybe you attended therapy a lot, maybe you will not find it so useful and groundbreaking. For me, it was like half-half. For some of the things, I was like, oh yeah, I've already heard that before, I already know that. And there were some new things that I also learned through this book, so I still decided to give it 4 stars. And overall, I did enjoy it. So if you're new to learning about mental health and you want a good book, I think I can highly recommend this one. These were all the books that I read in March and April. I would say my favorite was definitely A Study in Drowning. I would highly recommend this one. I still think about it to this day. It's such an amazing book. Okay guys, that is it for this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.